Get your ghetto ass out of the car before I drag you out myself." Officer Harlan Voss slammed his hand onto Kendra Ellis's doorframe, rocking the vehicle as his eyes stripped her down to a threat he'd already decided she was. His thumb hovered near his holster, relaxed and practiced like muscle memory. Kendra's breath caught, but her hands stayed raised, fingers spread, shaking in the open air. "Don't make me work harder for this," he muttered. The order came. A sharp crack split the daylight, and Kendra collapsed onto the pavement as her phone kept recording. The street went silent while Voss remained unaware of what would soon be standing outside his door. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The sun blazed overhead as Kendra Ellis guided her silver Accord through the lunch hour traffic. The elementary school's brick walls were just minutes away, and she still had time to review her afternoon counseling sessions. "I'm telling you, Lila, that 4th grade class really opened up during circle time today," Kendra said, her voice carrying through the car's speakers. Even Tommy shared about his dad's deployment. "That's amazing," Lila Vargas replied, her voice warm with pride. "Those kids trust you so much, Kendra. You have such a gift with them." Kendra smiled, checking her mirrors as she changed lanes. "They just need someone to listen. Speaking of which, did you get those incident reports I left on your desk? The ones about—" Red and blue lights suddenly flashed in her rearview mirror. A police cruiser had slipped behind her, its chrome grille filling her view. "Hold on, Lila. I'm being pulled over." Kendra kept her voice steady as she signaled and pulled into the Shell station on the corner. The concrete was bright white under the midday sun, and customers pumping gas turned to watch. "Want me to stay on the line?" Lila asked. "Yes, please." Kendra put the car in park, placing both hands visible on the steering wheel. Her heartbeat quickened, but her breathing remained controlled. Heavy boots crunched on pavement as Officer Harlan Voss approached her window. His face was already tight with tension, jaw clenched beneath his mirrored sunglasses. "License and registration," he barked before she could speak. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, my name is Kendra Ellis. I work as a counselor at—" "I said step out." His voice cracked like a whip. Kendra kept her movements slow and deliberate as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm reaching for my purse now, sir." "Out. Now." Voss yanked the door open, grabbing her arm. "Officer, please." "I'm complying." The purse slipped from her grasp as he dragged her from the car. Her phone clattered to the pavement, Lila's voice still carrying through the speaker. "Kendra, what's happening?" Across the street, a yellow school bus had stopped at the red light. Young faces pressed against the windows, eyes wide and uncertain. Kendra saw them watching and fought to stay calm. "Sir, I'm a school counselor. Those are my students." "Hands where I can see them," Voss shouted, though her palms were already raised. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Kendra said firmly, even as his grip bruised her arm. "My name is Kendra Ellis. I work at—" Voss shoved her shoulder hard, spinning her toward the cruiser. "I said stop resisting." "Officer, please listen." Kendra stumbled as her heel caught the curb. She windmilled backward, trying to catch her balance. Voss's face contorted. The morning sun caught his badge as his hand moved to his weapon. Time seemed to slow as Kendra saw the fear in his eyes transform into something darker, a rage that had been waiting for an excuse. The first shot cracked across the gas station lot. The second and third followed in rapid succession, drowning out the screams that erupted from witnesses. The school bus driver laid on his horn as children began to cry. Kendra fell. The concrete was hot against her cheek. Her vision swam, the world tilting sideways as panicked footsteps scattered in all directions. The gas station security cameras stared down impassively, recording everything in merciless detail. Through the ringing in her ears, she could hear Lila screaming her name through the fallen phone. The screen lit up with an incoming call, Marcus's smiling photo appearing as it rang and rang. The sun continued to pour down, harsh and unforgiving, as Kendra lay motionless on the blood-stained pavement. Her outstretched hand cast no shadow in the blinding light of high noon. Around her, chaos erupted. A woman filming with her phone sobbed openly. The gas station attendant rushed out, first aid kit in hand, but stopped short at Voss's raised palm. The school bus finally turned the corner, carrying away dozens of traumatized young witnesses. "Stay back, everyone. Stay back." Voss's voice cracked as he kept his weapon drawn, though Kendra hadn't moved since the shots. His hand shook visibly now, sweat running down his temples. More sirens wailed in the distance. The gas station security camera continued its methodical sweep, its red light blinking as it captured every detail: the growing pool of blood, the scattered contents of Kendra's purse, her phone still connecting her last moments to horrified listeners. The device buzzed again on the concrete, Marcus's call going unanswered as his wife lay still under the merciless midday sun. The screen was cracked now, spiderweb across his face, but the phone kept ringing, desperate to make a connection that would never be completed. The gathering crowd pressed against the yellow caution tape that Voss hastily strung up, their phones raised high to document the scene. The officer's commands grew more frantic as he tried to control the situation that had spiraled so violently beyond his grasp. But Kendra remained silent and unmoving, her professional attire now stained dark against the white concrete. The lunch-hour traffic continued to flow past the gas station, drivers slowing to stare at the tableau of tragedy illuminated by the stark midday light. And still her phone rang, Marcus's name flashing repeatedly on the shattered screen. Each unanswered call a heartbeat, marking time in a world that had irreversibly changed. Marcus Kane heard the sirens before he saw the crowd. His heart pounded as he accelerated through yellow lights, weaving through traffic toward the Shell station. The mass of people grew visible, phones raised high, faces shocked and tearful. He abandoned his car half on the curb, shoving through the gathered onlookers. "That's my wife," he said, voice tight but controlled. "Let me through." The crowd parted. Time seemed to freeze as Marcus took in the scene beneath the bright blue sky. Kendra, lying motionless on the concrete, paramedics crouched over her still form, their movements already carrying the heavy resignation of futility. Her phone lay shattered nearby, his own missed calls still lighting up the cracked screen. "Sir, you need to stay back," an officer called out, reaching for Marcus's shoulder. Marcus didn't break stride. "That's my wife." His voice carried across the lot, steady despite the tremor in his hands. The paramedics glanced up as he approached. Their faces told him everything before they could speak: the slight headshake, the sympathetic grimace, the way they slowly sat back on their heels. One of them reached for a white sheet. "Time of death, 10:43 a.m., the paramedic said quietly. Near his cruiser, Officer Voss was already spinning his story into his radio, voice pitched high with manufactured stress. Subject became combative, reached for my weapon, feared for my life. A local reporter, Donovan Hale, pushed through the crowd with his camera rolling. His weathered face was grim as he captured the scene, the blood on the concrete, the scattered contents of Kendra's purse, the school bus tire mark still visible where it had pulled away. Across the street, a woman in workout clothes stood filming with trembling hands. Lila Benton. Marcus recognized her from the neighborhood. Despite her obvious fear, she kept her phone steady, documenting everything. A police sergeant with sweat stains under his arms tried to wave phones down. "Everyone needs to stop recording and clear the area," he barked, moving toward Lila. Marcus smoothly intercepted him, placing himself between the sergeant and Lila. He said nothing, but his posture spoke volumes. Shoulders squared, feet planted, eyes locked on the sergeant's face. "Sir, step aside." The sergeant grabbed Marcus's arm roughly. In one fluid motion, Marcus pivoted, breaking the grip with practiced precision. No punch thrown, no dramatic takedown, just a simple disarm that left the sergeant stumbling backward, face flushing red as the crowd murmured. Other officers tensed, hands moving to weapons. Marcus remained perfectly still, his calm somehow more unsettling than any show of aggression. "Keep recording," he said quietly to Lila, who nodded, her phone still raised. Donovan Hale moved closer, making sure to capture every detail. The morning heat was building, shimmering off the pavement as Marcus finally knelt beside his wife. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with infinite gentleness. "I'm here, love," he whispered, his composed expression cracking for just a moment. "I'm here." The crowd had grown larger now, spilling into the street. Cars slowed to witness the tableau, the grieving husband, the defensive officers, the dead woman on the ground beneath a merciless sun. Someone had placed flowers by the gas station door. A child's drawing of Kendra appeared, taped hastily to a light pole. Marcus stood slowly, his movements deliberate. He turned to face the gathered cameras, his silence drawing everyone's attention. Officer Voss had stopped mid-sentence in his radio call, watching with poorly concealed unease. The morning breeze carried distant traffic sounds and the soft sobs of witnesses. A plane passed overhead, its shadow briefly darkening the scene before the harsh sunlight returned in full force. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was clear and measured, carrying across the hushed crowd. "Tomorrow morning, this will be handled." The cameras kept rolling as he stood there, framed by the blue sky and the growing line of police vehicles. Behind him, paramedics finally covered Kendra with a white sheet, but not before Donovan Hale captured one final shot of her face. Peaceful despite everything, still wearing the gentle expression that had made her such a beloved figure at the elementary school. Lila Benton's hands had stopped shaking as she continued to film. Other neighbors had joined her, forming a wall of witnesses with phones raised like shields against injustice. They captured every detail, the way Voss couldn't meet anyone's eyes, the nervous shuffling of the other officers, the quiet dignity in Marcus's stance. The gas station security cameras whirred overhead, their unblinking lenses recording from multiple angles. News vans began arriving, reporters speaking urgently into microphones as they gestured at the growing memorial by the entrance. Through it all, Marcus remained motionless, his shadow stretching across the concrete where his wife lay. The morning sun continued its climb toward noon, harsh and revealing, leaving no darkness for lies to hide in. Chief Dana Clean stood at the podium, her Navy suit pressed and badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of City Hall's press room. Camera flashes punctuated the tense atmosphere as reporters jostled for position. In the front row, Marcus Kane sat perfectly still, his presence drawing nervous glances from city officials. At approximately 10:17 a.m. yesterday, Clean began, her voice practiced and controlled. An incident occurred during a routine traffic stop, resulting in the death of Kendra Ellis. Officer Harlan Voss has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Donovan Hale's hand shot up immediately. "Chief Clean, multiple witnesses recorded Officer Voss escalating the situation. Why hasn't he been charged?" Clean's jaw tightened. "This is a complex incident that requires careful review. We're gathering all available evidence." "The evidence is already public," Donovan interrupted, holding up his phone. "I have footage from 3 different angles showing an unarmed school counselor being shot in broad daylight." "Mr. Hale," Clean's voice hardened. "We understand the community's concerns, but we must follow proper procedures." From her position against the wall, Ada Renee Vargas shifted uncomfortably. She'd seen this dance before. The careful choice of words, the emphasis on procedure over justice, the slow burial of truth under bureaucratic quicksand. Her fingers tapped against her leather portfolio, mind already racing through the familiar pattern. "What about the children on the school bus?" Another reporter called out. "Have their statements been taken?" "We're not discussing witness statements at this time," Clean deflected. "What I can say is that Officer Voss has served this department for 15 years with distinction." Marcus's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened where they gripped his knees. Around him, the press room grew louder, questions overlapping. Was Officer Voss wearing a body camera? Why was Mrs. Ellis pulled over in the first place? Are there previous complaints against this officer? Through the room's windows, sunlight caught the edges of protest signs gathering in the plaza below. Justice for Kendra competed with Black Lives Matter and No More Killer Cops. As the crowd continued to grow, Cleany raised her hands. "We'll have another briefing when more information becomes available. Thank you for your time." As reporters shouted follow-up questions, Marcus stood smoothly and walked out. In the courthouse plaza, he found Lila Vargas waiting, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Mr. Kane," she said, voice barely steady, "I have something you need to hear." They found a quiet corner near the plaza's central fountain. Water sparkled in the midday sun as Lila pulled up the audio file. "I was still on the call when—" She swallowed hard. "When everything happened." The phone didn't disconnect right away. She pressed play. Kendra's calm voice came through first. "Officer, I'm keeping my hands visible. I'm a school counselor at— Out of the vehicle! Now!" Voss's voice cracked with aggression. "I'm complying, sir. I'm moving slowly." A sudden commotion, the sound of a body being shoved. "I said now. Please, my hands are up." "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." 3 shots rang out, followed by screams and chaos. Lila's hands shook as she stopped the recording. She never. She couldn't finish. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "Can you send that to me?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I already gave a copy to that reporter, Donovan Hale, and I uploaded it too." good. Marcus cut her off gently. The more copies out there, the better. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving with purpose. A single text. Alert Malik. Then he turned to Lila. You should go home. Take care of yourself. What happens next? You don't need to see it. The drive home felt surreal. Suburban streets rolled past. Children playing in yards, mail carriers making their rounds. Normal life continuing while his had shattered. Marcus parked in his driveway, staring at Kendra's car, still sitting where she'd left it yesterday morning. Inside, her presence was everywhere. Half-finished tea on the counter, lesson plans spread across the dining room table, her reading glasses perched on top of a stack of student files. Her work bag sat by the door where police had dropped it after collecting her personal effects. Marcus picked up the bag, his movements careful as he opened the main compartment. Among scattered papers and office supplies, a sealed manila envelope caught his eye, written in Kendra's neat handwriting. If anything happens, do not trust City Hall. His hands were steady as he broke the seal. Inside, he found carefully organized documents, property maps of predominantly black neighborhoods, lists of names and dates, financial records showing a pattern of targeted foreclosures, paperclip to the front, a single sheet with one word written in bold, retaliation. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the spread of documents on the counter. In the distance, a police siren wailed, but Marcus didn't look up. He was already memorizing names, connecting dots, seeing the bigger picture his wife had uncovered and died for. Outside, the afternoon light began to soften, but the truth in his hands remained sharp and clear as broken glass. A neighbor's wind chimes tinkled in the breeze, an incongruously peaceful sound in a world that had lost its center. Marcus continued reading, his shadow falling across page after page of evidence that would soon shatter more than just his own life. Sunlight flooded Veterans Memorial Park, casting short shadows beneath the oak trees lining the main path. Children laughed on the playground while parents watched from nearby benches. Joggers circled the walking track, and a youth baseball team practiced in the distance. Marcus Kane sat at a wooden picnic table, his back straight, hands folded on top of Kendra's manila envelope. 3 men approached from different directions, casual clothes, relaxed postures, but moving with unmistakable purpose. Lieutenant Malik Reed reached him first, wearing jeans and a plain blue polo shirt that did nothing to hide his military bearing. "Mr. Kane," Malik said quietly, extending his hand. Marcus stood, greeting him with a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming, Lieutenant." The other 2 men, Isaiah Cole and Devin Price, positioned themselves naturally at adjacent tables, appearing to enjoy the afternoon while maintaining clear sight lines across the park. "Let's sit," Malik suggested, his voice low and steady. "Tell me what you found." Marcus opened the envelope, spreading documents across the sun-warmed wood. Property maps formed a pattern across predominantly black neighborhoods, with red circles marking homes already seized and yellow highlighting upcoming targets. Kendra discovered this while counseling students, Marcus explained, pointing to specific addresses. Kids suddenly moving, families losing generations-old homes to mysterious code violations or tax disputes. She started connecting dots. Malik studied the maps, his expression hardening. Pressure tactics, create violations, force sales below market, flip the properties through shell companies. He touched one of the red circles. "I know this block. 3 families gone in 2 months. Accidents and arrests until they sold." She was building a case, Marcus continued, sliding over a list of names and dates. City officials, shell company directors, officers involved in targeted arrests. She had a meeting scheduled next week with federal housing authorities, which is why they couldn't let her make it. Malik finished, jaw tight. Holloway wasn't scared during that stop. He was cleaning up loose ends, making sure she couldn't testify. Marcus nodded. "What's your play?" "Not vengeance," Marcus replied. "Containment. We put Voss under constant observation, legal observation from public spaces. No shadows, no threats, just unmistakable presence in broad daylight. He can't run, can't destroy evidence, can't disappear quietly while the system protects him." "They'll fight back," Malik warned. "Not directly at first. They'll send provocateurs, try to trigger a response they can use to justify force. 1 punch thrown, 1 weapon spotted. That's all they need to turn it into a bloodbath." "Which is why we need absolute discipline," Marcus said. "No first strikes, no hidden weapons, no masks or tactical gear, just positioning and presence." Malik gestured to Isaiah and Devin, who smoothly joined them at the table. "Show me what you're thinking." For the next stretch, they built their plan in plain sight. Malik sketched layout diagrams while Isaiah, a former urban warfare specialist, identified key control points. Devin, who'd run protective operations in civilian zones, mapped camera angles and witness positions. "We'll need 4-person teams here, here, and here," Malik indicated, marking intersection points. "Public sidewalks only, maintaining clear foot traffic paths. 3 observation posts with rotating positions so no one stands too long. Local news vans will set up on the north side." Devin added, "We position our most visible teams in their sight lines. Let them document everything. Live stream protocols." Isaiah suggested multiple feeds, different platforms. If something happens, it happens in front of everyone. A teenager practicing skateboard tricks rolled past their table. A mom pushed a stroller along the path. The afternoon continued its peaceful rhythm as they planned their daylight siege. "What about when night falls?" Devin asked. "We don't need night," Marcus replied. "Everything happens in full sun. The darkness belongs to them. We take the day." Malik studied the final diagram. 30 operators minimum, 3 shifts, 10 per team. I can have them here by dawn. He looked at Marcus. "You understand, there's no going back from this. Once we move, everything changes." "Everything already changed," Marcus said simply. "Now we just make sure everyone sees it." They spent another hour refining details. Emergency response protocols, media interaction guidelines, contingency routes. Every movement would be recorded, every position documented, every action witnessed by dozens of cameras and hundreds of eyes. "One final thing," Malik said as they prepared to leave. "When this starts, stay centered, stay visible. Let them see the calm in your eyes while their world spins apart." Marcus nodded, gathering Kendra's documents. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows now, but tomorrow would bring new light. Malik pulled out his phone and sent a single message to a secure group. 11 a.m. tomorrow, full visibility. The children's laughter from the playground carried across the park. A pickup baseball game was starting on the field. Parents called their kids home for dinner. The world spun on, unaware that tomorrow would change everything. The morning sun climbed steadily over Cedar Grove, casting crisp shadows across manicured lawns and freshly washed cars. At precisely the hour, Marcus Kane stood motionless on the sidewalk, his presence drawing curious glances from early risers walking their dogs. Officer Harlan Voss's 2-story colonial loomed ahead, a temple of suburban security now transformed into a fortress of fear. The curtains twitched regularly, betraying the nervous movements inside. The street held its breath, temperature rising degree by degree as the morning aged. A paperboy finished his route. A mail carrier methodically worked his way down the opposite side, pretending not to notice the tension building like summer heat. The first pair arrived, Isaiah Cole and Marcus Thompson wearing polo shirts and pressed khakis, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. Dressed as accountants, they took positions 2 houses apart, their stance casual but precise. 3 minutes later, Devin Price and James Wilson appeared from different directions, claiming their own sections of public sidewalk. More pairs materialized every few minutes, some walking, others parking cars blocks away and strolling in. Each man positioned himself with mathematical precision, creating an invisible web of overlapping fields of view. No dramatic gestures, no tactical gear, just quiet competence and unshakable focus. Neighbors emerged onto porches and driveways, phones raised. Lila Benton's hands trembled slightly as she started her live stream from her front steps, but her voice remained steady. "They're arriving in pairs. No weapons visible, just standing, watching. Must be 20 or 30 of them now." By the appointed time, Lieutenant Malik Reed appeared beside Marcus. "Perimeter set," he murmured. "All approaches covered. Response teams in position." Inside Voss's house, shadows shifted behind blinds. A face appeared briefly in an upstairs window. Voss himself, complexion ashen despite the warming day. He vanished quickly, but his agitation was visible even through the glass. The distinctive rumble of a news van announced Donovan Hale's arrival. The veteran reporter emerged with his cameraman, immediately grasping the story's visual power. 30 black men in civilian clothes, arranged in a living geometry of contained power, surrounding a police officer's house in broad daylight. "This is Donovan Hale reporting live," he began, camera rolling. "We're on Cedar Grove, where an extraordinary scene is unfolding." More media vehicles appeared, drawn by scanner chatter and social media buzz. Drone cameras buzzed overhead, capturing the perfect symmetry of the formation from above. At the hour, the first patrol cars arrived, cautious, lights off. The officers emerged slowly, hands conspicuously away from weapons. They recognized what they were seeing: military discipline wrapped in civilian clothes, precise positioning that spoke of years of specialized training. "Sir," a young officer approached Marcus, voice uncertain. "We've received complaints about public sidewalk." Marcus interrupted calmly. "No laws being broken, no threats being made. We're simply ensuring Officer Voss remains visible to the public." The officer retreated, conferring with his colleagues in hushed tones. More police arrived, forming their own perimeter outside the SEAL's position. The tension ratcheted higher under the climbing sun. At the appointed moment, the first attempt at provocation came. Trent Malloy, off-duty, red-faced, and spoiling for a fight, shouldered through the gathering crowd. He made straight for Devin Price, who stood like a statue on the corner. "You can't do this," Malloy shouted, closing fast. "This is harassment. This is—" He shoved Devin's shoulder hard, trying to trigger a response. Devin moved like water, a subtle shift of weight, a precise grip, a controlled redirection of momentum. Suddenly, Malloy was airborne, then flat on his back on the sun-heated pavement. Devin had his arm locked and immobilized before the first gasp from the crowd. "Please don't touch me again," Devin said quietly, releasing the hold and stepping back to his original position. The entire interaction took less than 3 seconds. Dozens of phones captured the moment. Malloy scrambled up, face burning with humiliation, but 2 other officers pulled him away before he could escalate further. The message was clear: violence would be met with precise, overwhelming skill, then immediately released. No escalation, no revenge, just clinical demonstration of complete control. By the appointed time, the scene had crystallized into its final form. 30 black men in business casual attire, arranged in a perfect containment pattern. Police maintaining their own uncertain perimeter. Media cameras documenting every angle. Neighbors streaming every moment. And at the center, Voss's house, a prison built of visibility and shame. The sun reached its highest point, eliminating shadows, bathing everything in revealing light. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly hushed street. "Officer Voss, you're not leaving this street unseen." The words hung in the hot air, a promise and a sentence. Behind the curtains, Voss's shadow paced like a caged animal, discovered and exposed in the unforgiving day. Inside his tactical vest, Donovan's phone buzzed with messages from his station manager. Ratings were spiking as live feeds spread across networks. Lila's live stream count topped thousands of viewers. Police radios crackled with confused requests for guidance from headquarters. The siege had begun, not with violence or threats, but with the simple power of being seen. Every minute would be recorded, every action witnessed, every attempt at concealment foiled by the relentless sun and unwavering eyes of the world. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on Cedar Grove as more police vehicles rolled in, their tires crunching slowly over the sun-baked asphalt. Marcus Kane stood immobile beside Lieutenant Malik Reed, watching heat waves distort the air above the pavement. Sweat beaded on foreheads, but none of the SEALs moved to wipe it away. Police cruisers now blocked both ends of the street, their presence growing from cautious observation to show of force. Officers stepped out with practiced synchronization, adjusting tactical gear and exchanging meaningful glances. "Here comes the circus," Malik muttered, noting 3 black SUVs approaching with official plates. Chief Dana Clean emerged from the lead vehicle, her pressed uniform and camera-ready smile a stark contrast to the tension saturating the street. She paused to wave at news cameras, then huddled with her command staff, speaking in hushed tones while pointing at various positions around the perimeter. "Looking for weak spots," Marcus observed quietly. "They'll test us first." As if on cue, officers began probing the SEALs' formation. They moved in pairs, shoulders brushing past the station men, muttering under their breath. "Better watch your back, hero." One whispered to Isaiah Cole, bumping him harder than necessary. Isaiah didn't flinch. His eyes remained fixed ahead, posture relaxed but ready. "You boys picked the wrong neighborhood," another officer growled, stepping deliberately into Devin Price's personal space. Devin shifted his weight almost imperceptibly, preparing for anything while maintaining his disciplined non-engagement. Behind his window blinds, Officer Voss's silhouette paced back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he made call after call. His confidence was visible even through the glass, the smug assurance of a man certain the system would protect him. "Mr. Kane." The voice came low and urgent from behind. Ada Renee Vargas approached carefully, trying to appear casual despite her obvious concern. Her business suit looked out of place among the tactical gear and polo shirts. "We need to talk." Marcus turned slightly, acknowledging her presence while maintaining his view of the scene. "Here to shut us down, Miss Vargas." "I'm here to warn you," she murmured, keeping her voice below the growing crowd noise. "They're preparing to classify your group as an armed civilian threat. The paperwork's already moving. Even though we're unarmed and on public property, facts don't matter right now. They need a pretext." She glanced nervously at the gathering police force. Once that classification goes through, they'll have authorization for full tactical response. Marcus nodded once, unsurprised. "Thank you for the warning." Malik caught the exchange and made a subtle hand gesture. Around the perimeter, the SEALs adjusted their stance, shifting from parade rest to a looser, more prepared posture. To untrained eyes, nothing had changed, but now every man was positioned to react instantly if needed. The crowd lining the streets had doubled in the last hour. Teenagers perched in trees with phones raised high. Parents held children back on porches. News vans clogged the adjacent blocks, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal flowers searching for sun. Above it all, camera drones buzzed in holding patterns, documenting every movement. The air felt electric, charged with competing frequencies. Police radios crackling with coded messages, news reporters doing live stand-ups, social media streams broadcasting every angle. The heat only added to the tension, turning the peaceful suburban street into a pressure cooker of competing forces. Chief Clean's smile had hardened as she received updates through her earpiece. Her commands became sharper, more urgent. Officers began donning riot gear, the sound of Velcro and clicking plastic adding to the growing symphony of confrontation. "They're choosing force," Malik observed quietly. "They always do," Marcus replied. "It's easier than truth." More vehicles arrived, larger ones with tinted windows and reinforced bumpers. SWAT team members emerged, checking weapons and adjusting body armor. The message was clear: submit or be subdued. The crowd sensed the shift. Phones rose higher. Live streams multiplied. Donovan Hale's voice carried across the murmurs. Police appeared to be escalating their presence, though the protesters remained completely nonviolent. Through it all, the SEALs maintained their positions. No weapons, no threats, no aggression, just unwavering presence and precise positioning. Their discipline seemed to magnify the increasingly aggressive police response, making it look more like panic than power. Lila Benton's livestream captured a police commander asking, "Sir, are you sure about this? They haven't done anything illegal." "Follow orders," came the curt response. The temperature peaked as noon approached. Heat rippled off car hoods and tactical vehicles. Sweat darkened uniforms and civilian clothes alike. The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. A police captain emerged from conference with Chief Clean. His face was set with grim determination as he surveyed the scene one final time. Behind him, riot units began moving into formation, shields locked, batons ready. The captain raised his hand, held it for a moment in the shimmering air, then gave a single sharp nod. The riot units began to advance. The wall of riot shields advanced in lockstep, blue uniforms pressing forward beneath the merciless sun. "Disperse immediately," one officer shouted. "Stay where you are," yelled another. "On the ground," screamed a third. The contradicting orders echoed across Cedar Grove, creating a deliberate cacophony of confusion. Marcus recognized the tactic: create chaos, force mistakes, manufacture an excuse. The SEALs remained motionless as the line approached, their discipline a stark contrast to the aggressive advance. "Final warning!" Chief Clean's voice crackled through a megaphone. "Clear the area or face arrest." The riot line surged forward suddenly. A shield slammed into Devin Price's chest, driving him back a step. He absorbed the impact, hands still loose at his sides, face unchanged. The officer behind the shield cursed in frustration at Devin's lack of reaction. Isaiah Cole's controlled breathing didn't even falter when a baton caught him across the ribs. The striker was clumsy, telegraphing his move with tensed shoulders and shifted weight. Isaiah could have blocked it, countered it, ended it, but he took the hit instead, letting the cameras capture everything. "They're assaulting officers," someone shouted, though every phone and news camera showed the opposite. The lie was desperate, transparent in the stark daylight. Lila Benton's livestream captured it all. The men in civilian clothes aren't fighting back. They're just standing there while police... Her voice cut off in a gasp as another baton swung. The SEALs held their position, their restraint making the police aggression look increasingly unhinged. Sweat ran down faces on both sides, but where the officers' expressions showed rage and fear, the SEALs remained impassive, controlled. "Move in," Chief Clean ordered through the megaphone. "Take them down." Her words were interrupted by running footsteps. Trent Malloy, still in civilian clothes from his earlier humiliation, charged through the police line straight at Marcus. His face was twisted with fury, hands balled into fists, all pretense of procedure abandoned. But Malloy never reached his target. Lieutenant Malik Reed stepped into his path with surgical precision, catching Malloy's wild rush with practiced ease. There was no dramatic collision, no theatrical display. Just a redirect of momentum that sent Malloy face first into the sun-baked pavement with bone-jarring force. The impact seemed to snap something in the police line. An officer near the back raised his taser, hands shaking. The probes fired wide, missing his target entirely and striking a parked car. The electrical discharge sparked against metal, and the car's alarm began wailing. The crowd's reaction was instant. Screams erupted as people scrambled backward. Camera phones wobbled, their footage jerking wildly. Parents grabbed children off porches, dragging them inside. News crews pushed closer, fighting for better angles. "They're armed," someone yelled from the police line, though not a single SEAL had drawn a weapon or raised a fist. Another taser fired, then another. Probes crossed in the air like deadly threads weaving chaos. A bystander fell, caught by stray voltage. More screams, more alarms, more lies dying in the sunlight. Through it all, Marcus stood unmoved, watching as the last threads of official fiction unraveled. Every phone, every camera, every witness could see the truth, could see who was escalating and who was restraining, who was provoking and who was protecting. The SEALs' formation had shifted imperceptibly during the chaos, adjusting to protect the crowd while maintaining their discipline. No one had broken ranks. No one had thrown a punch. No one had given them the excuse they wanted. Then Officer Voss's voice cut through the noise. "Just shoot the bastards." He was leaning out his front door now, face red with rage and fear. "They're threatening officers. Use force." Those words hung in the air for one heated heartbeat. Malik's eyes met Marcus's. A decision crystallized between them, not to start a riot, but to end this farce before someone died. Malik's command was short and sharp: control and contain. The shift was instantaneous. One moment the SEALs were static targets. The next, they were liquid precision. An officer raised his baton high, telegraphing another wild strike. Isaiah Cole caught the arm mid-swing, twisted, and drove the man to his knees with clinical efficiency. Another officer lunged with his shield, trying to crush Devin Price against a cruiser. Devin slipped the attack like water, redirecting the shield's momentum until its wielder stumbled forward. The officer's feet left the ground for one weightless moment before gravity reasserted itself. The first officer hit the pavement hard, shield clattering away across sun-heated asphalt. The sound seemed to trigger something primal in the police line, a sudden realization that their authority was not absolute, their power not uncontested. The street erupted, batons swung, bodies moved, the carefully maintained order dissolved into desperate chaos. But this was no longer a riot. It was a lesson in the difference between violence and control, between force and skill, between authority and power. An officer threw a wild punch at Marcus. Malik caught the fist almost gently, turned it just so, and let physics finish the lesson. The officer's own momentum carried him forward into a painful introduction to gravity. More officers fell, not from brutal strikes or excessive force, but from their own aggression turned against them. Each takedown was precise, controlled, and captured in high definition by dozens of cameras. There would be no ambiguity, no room for creative reports, no way to hide what was happening in the bright light of day. "Stop!" Chief Clean's voice cracked over the megaphone. "Everyone, stop!" But momentum had taken over, and the street had become a stage where every lie would be exposed, every abuse of power answered, all under the unforgiving eye of the midday sun. The riot police regrouped, their line reforming with a wall of shields and raised pepper spray canisters. They advanced with heavy steps, boots scraping against asphalt, confident that superior numbers would finally overwhelm their opponents. The afternoon sun gleamed off their face shields as they moved forward in formation. "Gas them!" an officer shouted. "Push through!" But the SEALs had already adapted. They split into smaller units using parked cars and concrete barriers as cover. Isaiah Cole pulled two civilians behind a pickup truck just as the first spray arced through the air. The irritant scattered in the breeze, missing its targets entirely. "Keep recording," Marcus called to the crowd, his voice steady. "Don't stop filming." Devin Price guided his team between two SUVs, creating a narrow corridor that nullified the police shield's effectiveness. When three officers tried to push through the gap, they found themselves trapped. Their wide riot shields became liabilities in the tight space. Devin disarmed the first officer with a quick strike to the wrist, while his partner controlled the others with precise joint locks. "They're flanking!" someone shouted from the police line, but there was no flanking to be done. The SEALs had positioned themselves too carefully, using the street's geography against their attackers. Every advance was met with tactical retreats that drew officers into disadvantageous positions. Shields meant nothing when you couldn't swing them. Batons were useless without room to strike. Two officers spotted Marcus directing movements and charged toward him, thinking they'd found a weak point. The first reached for his pepper spray, but Malik Reed appeared as if from nowhere. He caught the officer's arm and redirected it upward. The spray released harmlessly into the air while Malik used the man's momentum to send him sprawling. The second officer swung his baton at Marcus's head. Many in the crowd gasped, expecting violence, but Marcus moved with fluid precision. He stepped inside the strike, his elbow connecting with the officer's ribs. In the same motion, he trapped the man's arm and pivoted. The officer's feet left the ground. His face met the curb with enough force to crack his face shield. "Jesus Christ," Donovan Hale muttered from behind his camera. "They're not even trying to hurt them." He was right. The SEALs could have ended this brutally, but they maintained control. Each takedown was measured, each response proportional. They weren't fighting. They were teaching a lesson about the difference between authority and skill, between force and control. Police radios crackled with increasingly desperate commands. Officers who had started the confrontation with swagger now moved uncertainly, aware that their usual tactics weren't working. A lieutenant tried to rally his men, pushing them forward with shields raised. "Take them down," the lieutenant ordered. "Any means necessary, make the arrests." Isaiah Cole met the advance head-on. He slipped between two shields, hooked his foot behind an officer's knee, and controlled his fall to the ground. As two more officers moved to help their colleague, Isaiah used their own shield wall against them. He guided one shield into another, creating a domino effect that sent four men stumbling. "Watch the crossfire," Malik called as more pepper spray filled the air. But the SEALs were already moving. They flowed around the chemical agents like water around rocks, always maintaining their defensive positions while letting the police exhaust themselves. Years of training had taught them that patience was deadlier than aggression. Devin Price demonstrated this perfectly. When three officers rushed him simultaneously, he didn't counterattack. Instead, he redirected each charge, letting their own momentum carry them into painful meetings with vehicle doors and light poles. None of the takedowns looked violent on camera, just smooth transitions from attack to defeat. The crowd had grown larger, phones raised high to capture every moment. They witnessed police tactics crumbling against superior training and discipline. Each failed attack, each controlled takedown streamed live across social media. There would be no official narrative to spin, no way to hide what was happening in the bright afternoon sun. A commander's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is your final warning. Submit to arrest or we will escalate force." That's when everything changed. Harlan Voss, who had been watching from behind his curtains, finally snapped. He threw open his front door and stormed onto his porch, face red with rage and fear. "What are you waiting for?" he screamed at the police line. "Finish it. That's what we do, right? Finish it." The violence stopped as if someone had hit a pause button. SEALs froze mid-movement. Officers halted mid-step. Every camera, every phone, every news lens swiveled toward Voss's porch. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and admission. "That's what we do," he repeated, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "We finish them." The crowd drew a collective breath. Police radios went quiet. Even the news helicopters seemed to hover more softly. Voss stood on his porch, authority radiating from his stance, rage twisting his features, and every second was being captured in high definition. All eyes fixed on him, the man who had killed Kendra Ellis now revealing his true nature in the open. His words, his rage, his assumption of authority over life and death. Everything the SEALs had positioned themselves to expose was now walking straight into frame. The silence deepened as cameras zoomed in on Voss's face. The truth didn't need interpretation. It didn't need explanation. It stood on that porch shouting orders that revealed exactly who he was and what he believed. Voss's face shifted from rage to realization. The cameras caught every micro-expression as it dawned on him what he'd just revealed. His authority, his assumed immunity, had betrayed him in one unguarded moment of fury. He stood frozen on his porch, mouth slightly open, as if trying to snatch his words back from the air. Ada Renee Vargas emerged from the crowd, her professional demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around her. In her raised hand, her phone displayed Lila Vargas's recording from Kendra's final moments. She positioned herself where both feeds could capture her voice clearly. "Play them side by side," she called to the news crews. "Today and yesterday, let everyone hear the same man, the same voice, the same intent." The recordings began to circulate instantly. On one, Voss's voice barked impossible commands at Kendra, followed by the sounds of aggression and gunshots. On the other, his fresh outburst rang with the same entitled rage, the same assumption of deadly power. The juxtaposition needed no commentary. "Kendra!" someone in the crowd called out. Others took up the name, building into a rhythmic chant that echoed off the suburban houses. "Kendra! Kendra!" Police commanders huddled near their vehicles, radioing frantically for guidance. Their careful choreography of provocations and responses had backfired. Instead of the SEALs appearing as aggressors, Voss himself had painted the true picture, one of institutional arrogance and casual violence. Chief Dana Clean arrived, her face tight with controlled panic. She whispered urgently to her command staff while glancing at the media presence. The headlines were already writing themselves, and none of them would follow her preferred narrative. "Officer Voss," she called out, her voice carrying professional concern, "please step inside. We need to secure your safety." But Voss didn't move. He stood paralyzed by the weight of exposure, his swagger replaced by visible fear. Two sergeants approached him, their movements careful under the scrutiny of dozens of lenses. "Come on, Harlan," one muttered. "Don't make this worse." They took his arms, guiding him down the porch steps with firm grips that looked protective but felt punitive. Voss stumbled slightly, his trained intimidation crumbling as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Blood dripped bright red onto the sun-bleached sidewalk. "This is for your protection," Chief Clean announced to the cameras. "Given the truth," someone shouted, cutting through her practiced speech. Marcus watched the performance with cold understanding. He'd seen this dance before. The show of action, the pretense of accountability, all carefully staged to diffuse public anger without creating actual change. He caught Malik's eye and gave a slight nod. The SEALs maintained their positions, unmoved by the theater before them. "Clear the area!" Orders began flowing through police radios. "Push back the crowd. Secure a perimeter." Officers who had been humbled minutes before found new confidence, forming lines to push back observers. News crews were directed to safe distances. Phones were blocked by raised shields. The containment wasn't just physical, it was informational. Within hours, Voss sat in an air-conditioned office while investigators reviewed the situation. By later, terms like context and prior service entered the official statements. Hours brought the first mentions of procedural concerns about the evidence against him. Marcus received word through Renee Vargas. A sealed indictment was being prepared, not against Voss, but against him. The charges would include coordinating civil unrest and inciting violence against law enforcement. The SEALs would be named as co-conspirators unless they dispersed immediately. The afternoon sun began to soften as police systematically cleared the streets. Neighbors were encouraged to return to their homes. Media vehicles received parking citations that required immediate relocation. The crowd that had witnessed everything was slowly dispersed, pushed back block by block until only a core group of observers remained. Just before sunset, Voss emerged from the police station. His smirk had returned along with his badge and gun. He stood on the steps, deliberately visible, straightening his uniform while cameras caught his triumphant return to duty. "The matter has been thoroughly reviewed," Chief Kleen announced, standing beside him. "Officer Voss has been cleared of any procedural violations." The ride back to his house was a procession of patrol cars, lights flashing to clear his path. He stepped onto his porch once more, the same spot where he'd exposed himself hours earlier. But now his confidence was restored. The system had protected him just as it always had. Marcus stood with Malik and the remaining SEALs, watching Voss's performance from their legal observation distance. The afternoon's victory had dissolved into familiar institutional deflection. Evidence would be questioned. Witnesses would be pressured. The machinery of protection was already grinding into motion. "They're going to come for you next," Malik said quietly. Marcus nodded, his expression unchanged. The driveway where Voss now parked was the same one he'd been so desperate to defend that morning. The porch where he now stood triumphant was the same one where he'd revealed his true nature. Every detail, every location, every player was exactly where they needed to be. Voss raised his hand in a mocking wave to the few remaining observers. He made a show of unlocking his door, of claiming his territory again. His body language broadcast victory dominance and the unshakable confidence of a man certain the system would always take his side. The sun touched the horizon, painting the street in deep orange as Voss disappeared inside his house. He had survived the day. He had weathered the exposure. He was free, untouched, and certain of his invulnerability. The battle, it seemed, had ended exactly as such battles always did, with authority protecting its own. After Voss's triumphant return, police began systematically clearing the neighborhood. Officers moved door to door, suggesting residents return inside. News vans received citations requiring immediate relocation. The crowd that had witnessed everything slowly dispersed under the methodical pressure of authority reasserting control. Marcus Kane walked away from Voss's house with deliberate calm. Lieutenant Malik Reed beside him. Their controlled exit confused the remaining cameras. This wasn't the desperate retreat they'd expected from defeated men. Devin Price and Isaiah Cole fell in step behind them, their disciplined posture unchanged despite the day's brutality. Other team members peeled away in pairs, maintaining the appearance of orderly dispersal. "They're watching every move," Malik said quietly as they rounded a corner, expecting us to run or fight back. "Let them watch," Marcus replied. "They're looking for the wrong signals." The team regrouped at the Riverside Community Center, a busy hub of after-school programs and neighborhood meetings. The choice was intentional. No backrooms, no shadows, just open spaces filled with ordinary activity. Parents picked up children from basketball practice, while senior citizens played cards at corner tables. The SEALs spread out naturally, blending with the flow of community life. In the main hall, Marcus unfolded Kendra's laptop on a central table. His fingers moved with practiced precision, navigating through layers of security she'd built, knowing this day might come. Malik leaned in, studying the screen as folders began unlocking. "Kendra built a dead man switch," Marcus explained, his voice steady. "Everything she uncovered, property records, banking data, witness statements, all tied to public timestamps and metadata that can't be altered." Devin Price shifted closer, his tactical mind recognizing the strategy. The house confrontation wasn't about Voss at all. It was about movement. Isaiah Cole added, understanding dawning in his eyes, "Forcing reactions." Marcus nodded. Every time they responded, they left traces. Phone signals pinging towers, vehicles logged on traffic cameras, shell companies rushing transfers between accounts. Malik pulled out his phone, comparing notes they'd taken during the operation. "The plate numbers we logged matched these property holdings." He pointed to Kendra's documentation. "Same players, same patterns." A call came through on Marcus's secure line. Ada Renee Vargas, her voice tense with controlled urgency. "The office is in chaos. Subpoenas are hitting faster than legal can block them. Someone triggered automatic filing protocols in 3 different jurisdictions. The chief judge is demanding explanations for sealed records nobody knew existed." "Any attempt to stop it?" Marcus asked. "They're trying, but the timestamps are already registered. Federal oversight kicks in if they interfere." Renee paused. "This is what she was building, isn't it? A failsafe they couldn't bury." "One last thing to verify," Marcus said. "I'll call back." The team worked in focused silence, cross-referencing data points against their morning observations. Isaiah tracked vehicle movements while Devin mapped phone patterns. Malik coordinated with other teams, confirming positions and timestamps. Each piece clicked into place, building an unbreakable chain of evidence. "Timeline solid," Isaiah reported. "Every movement matches the metadata." "Banking records are synced," Devin added. "Transfer patterns confirm the property scheme." Malik studied the completed framework. "They can't claim confusion or coincidence. The pattern's too clear." Marcus opened one final screen, a simple verification prompt. Behind it lay everything Kendra had discovered: the targeted harassment of black homeowners, the coordinated pressure campaigns, the false arrests meant to force property sales. More importantly, it held proof of how her traffic stop connected to all of it. The community center hummed with normal activity around them, a physical reminder that justice could emerge from ordinary spaces. The truth didn't require shadows or violence to prevail. Children still played basketball outside. Senior citizens still dealt cards at their regular tables. The mundane rhythm of daily life provided cover for the systematic dismantling of corruption. Marcus's finger hovered over the key. This was Kendra's final act of protection, not just for herself, but for every person the system had tried to silence. She'd built it carefully, patiently, knowing the truth would need more than one voice to break through. The team stood ready, each understanding their role in what would follow. They'd created the pressure that forced their opponents to move carelessly. Now those desperate actions would become evidence that couldn't be buried or denied. For Kendra, Marcus said quietly and pressed confirm. Across the city, servers began executing predetermined protocols. Court filing systems activated. Media outlets received encrypted data packages. Oversight committees found urgent flags in their workflows. The machinery of justice Kendra had prepared started turning, powered by the very bureaucracy that had failed her. The afternoon light slanted through the community center windows, painting patterns on the floor as Marcus closed the laptop. Outside, children played basketball on sun-warmed concrete. Inside, a system of corruption began cracking under the weight of irrefutable truth. At precisely the hour, phones across the city lit up with synchronized alerts. The first wave hit news desks, urgent notifications about court filings and document releases. Within minutes, social media feeds exploded as people began processing the scope of what was emerging. Donovan Hale sat in his news van, frantically scrolling through the flood of information pouring onto his screen. His hands shook as he realized what he was seeing. Property records revealed a systematic pattern of harassment targeting black homeowners. Internal emails documented coordinated pressure campaigns. Banking records showed suspicious payments flowing through shell companies tied to police union officials. "Get the camera rolling now," he barked to his crew. "We're going live in 3, 2. "I'm here with Marcus Kane." Donovan began, camera rolling, whose wife's death sparked what many are calling a transformation in local law enforcement. "Mr. Kane, now that federal charges have been filed and the property scheme exposed, what comes next?" Marcus stood straight, his composure unwavering. "Today, we're announcing the Kendra Ellis Community Defense Fund. Using assets seized from the corrupt officials and developers, we'll provide legal protection for vulnerable homeowners. This was never about revenge. It was about ensuring no other family faces what we faced." "Your wife's evidence proved crucial," Donovan noted. "Did you know what she was documenting?" "Kendra believed in doing things in the open," Marcus replied. "She kept records because she knew sunlight is the best disinfectant. The courage wasn't just hers. It belonged to every neighbor who filmed, every witness who spoke up, every person who refused to look away." Throughout the city, a collective exhale seemed to ripple through streets and neighborhoods. Outside the police station, officers who'd opposed the corruption privately now felt empowered to speak. In community meetings, residents began sharing stories they'd kept quiet for years. The weight of silence lifted, replaced by the harder but cleaner work of reform. The federal building downtown, agents moved with urgent purpose. Teams deployed to multiple locations across the city: City Hall, the police union office, various precinct buildings. There was no need for stealth or darkness. They moved in broad daylight, badges visible, warrant documents held high for cameras to capture. Ada Renee Vargas stood in her office, phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with federal prosecutors. "The evidence chain is unbreakable," she explained. "Every document has multiple verification sources. We need to move on these indictments immediately." She paused, listening to the response. Yes, I understand the implications. And yes, I'm requesting protective custody. The people we're about to charge have already demonstrated their willingness to use deadly force against witnesses. On major news networks, Donovan Hale delivered breaking coverage from the scene at City Hall. What we're seeing is unprecedented in scope, he reported, struggling to maintain professional composure. Documents reveal a years-long conspiracy targeting black property owners using police harassment and false arrests to force sales at depressed prices. The killing of Kendra Ellis appears directly linked to her planned testimony about this scheme. The footage from the morning's confrontation played beside him, now overlaid with timing data that proved police had deliberately provoked violence. Each aggressive move by officers matched time-stamped orders from command, revealing a calculated attempt to create justification for arrests. Federal agents have already served warrants at multiple locations, Donovan continued. Sources indicate grand jury indictments are being unsealed against several high-ranking officials. The FBI has confirmed their public corruption unit is taking lead on the investigation. At the Riverside Community Center, Marcus and his team watched the cascade of revelations on multiple screens. They remained calm, professional. This was the outcome they'd trained for, the justice Kendra had engineered. Scanner traffic is shifting, Melick reported, listening to his earpiece. Federal tactical units moving into position. Isaiah Cole checked his phone. First wave of arrests confirmed at City Hall. They're taking the deputy chief and 3 commanders into custody. Union lawyers are scrambling, Devin Price added. They just tried to file emergency injunctions in 3 courts, all denied within minutes. The community center's normal activity continued around them, a physical reminder that justice could emerge from ordinary spaces. The truth didn't require shadows or violence to prevail. Children still played basketball outside. Senior citizens still dealt cards at their regular tables. The mundane rhythm of daily life provided cover for the systematic dismantling of corruption. A new sound cut through the afternoon. Different sirens, different agencies, different authority. Federal vehicles moved with precision through city streets, their lights flashing in the bright sun. Local police units pulled aside, powerless to interfere as higher jurisdiction took control. Online body camera footage from that morning began surfacing, showing officers receiving orders that directly contradicted their public statements. Radio transmissions proved coordination between Voss and senior officials immediately after Kendra's killing. Each new piece of evidence reinforced the others, creating an interlocking wall of truth. The federal convoy turned onto Voss's street with deliberate purpose, lights flashing against sun-bright windows. There would be no darkness to hide in, no shadows to enable denial. Justice was arriving in full daylight, where everyone could witness its execution. Harlan Voss emerged from his front door with the same smug confidence he'd shown earlier. His swagger lasted exactly 3 steps onto the porch before he registered the unfamiliar vehicles. These weren't city police cruisers with familiar markings. The badges catching sunlight weren't worn by officers he could intimidate or call for favors. "What is this?" he demanded, voice cracking as federal agents moved up his walkway with practiced efficiency. "Harlan Voss," the lead agent announced clearly, holding up credentials. "FBI, we have a federal warrant for your arrest on multiple charges, including civil rights violations, conspiracy, and witness intimidation resulting in death." Voss's face twisted. "You can't. I have protection. I'm a decorated officer." "Not anymore," the agent replied simply, advancing up the steps. Voss lunged sideways, trying to duck back inside. 2 agents caught him before he made it through the doorway. He thrashed, throwing an elbow that caught one agent in the chest. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 4 sets of hands drove him down, his cheeks scraping concrete as they secured his arms behind his back. Blood dripped bright red onto the sun-bleached sidewalk. Voss writhed, but the agent's grip was implacable. Unlike the local police confrontation earlier, no crowd rushed forward to interfere. Neighbors watched silently from their porches. News cameras rolled from a respectful distance. This was pure procedure, the methodical application of federal authority. "You're making a mistake," Voss shouted as they hauled him upright. "I was following orders. Ask the chief. Ask the union." "They're being arrested too," an agent informed him coldly. Across town, coordinated raids swept through offices and homes. The deputy police chief was led out of a country club lunch meeting in handcuffs. 3 commanders were taken into custody at the Union Hall. A prominent real estate developer who'd profited from the property scheme was arrested in front of his downtown high-rise. Lieutenant Malik Reed's team maintained discreet observation positions, ensuring key witnesses reached protective custody safely. They watched Lila Vargas, still carrying Kendra's final phone call recording, escorted by federal marshals to give her official statement. Lila Benton and other neighborhood witnesses were similarly secured, their testimony now crucial evidence rather than ignored complaints. "Movement on your 3, Devin Price murmured into his radio, spotting a police union lawyer rushing toward the federal building with a stack of emergency motions. "Let him go," Malik replied. "His paperwork's already been rejected by 3 judges. He's just making his billable hours." The team maintained their vigilance. Even with federal authority taking control, they knew desperate people might still lash out. Their caution proved warranted when a figure suddenly broke from behind a parked car, charging toward Marcus with rage-blind intensity. "This is all your fault," the man screamed, a patrol officer who'd worked closely with Voss for years. Devin Price moved like liquid lightning. He intercepted the attacker 3 steps from Marcus, redirecting the man's momentum into a controlled takedown that ended with a precision arm lock. No punches thrown, no excessive force, just pure tactical efficiency that left the would-be assailant helpless on the pavement. Federal agents quickly took custody of the officer, adding another charge to the growing list. Devin resumed his position without comment, ever professional. The incident barely caused a ripple in the ongoing operation. Back at Voss's house, agents conducted a thorough search as their suspect continued to unravel. His shouted claims of just following orders grew more specific and incriminating with each passing minute. Every word was recorded, every accusation noted for follow-up investigation. "The chief signed off on everything," he ranted as they guided him toward a waiting vehicle. "The union guaranteed protection. We had a system." News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing his meltdown in high definition. Local stations had already begun breaking down his accusations into investigative segments, comparing them against the evidence Kendra had collected. "Ask about the Thompson property on Oak Street," Voss screamed, seemingly unaware he was confessing to additional crimes. "Ask how many others got the same treatment as that counselor." The growing crowd maintained a strange silence, as if witnessing a solemn ceremony rather than an arrest. Parents held children close. Elderly residents who'd lived through decades of similar injustices wiped quiet tears. This wasn't celebration, it was something deeper, more cathartic. Voss's legs finally gave out as they reached the federal vehicle. He sagged between 2 agents, the fight draining from him as reality set in. His badge and gun had already been seized as evidence. His uniform would soon be replaced by prison clothes. The system he trusted to protect him had crumbled in the harsh light of accountability. "Wait," he tried one last time, voice breaking. "I can give you names. I know who ordered the hit on—" An agent shut the car door, cutting off his desperate offer. The tinted windows hid him from public view, but his silhouette was still visible. Head bowed, shoulders slumped in defeat. Marcus stood perfectly still as the convoy prepared to depart, his expression impossible to read. Years of strategic planning, months of gathering evidence, weeks of precise coordination, and days of tactical execution had led to this moment. Federal lights flashed against the houses, marking time until the vehicles pulled away. Voss's voice could still be heard faintly through the window, growing more panicked as he realized this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. The convoy rolled forward with implacable purpose, taking him away from the neighborhood he'd terrorized, the badge he'd abused, and the impunity he'd relied on for so long. The intersection of Maple and 4th stood empty under the bright afternoon sun, orange cones directing traffic away from the small gathering. The same gas station where Kendra Ellis had lost her life now served as a silent witness to a different kind of moment. Community members clustered together, their faces solemn but determined. Lila Benton stepped forward, gripping one edge of the cloth covering the memorial plaque. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice carried clearly across the hushed crowd. "We're here because one of our own spoke up, because Kendra Ellis believed in doing what's right, even when it was dangerous." Mrs. Washington, who'd taught at the elementary school for 30 years, took hold of the other corner. "This isn't just about remembering, it's about witnessing, about making sure nothing stays hidden anymore." Together, they pulled the cloth away. Sunlight caught the polished bronze, making the words gleam. Kendra Ellis witnessed, remembered, justice comes in full light. Children from the school where Kendra had worked stood quietly with their parents. Some held small bouquets of flowers. Others simply watched with solemn eyes that had seen too much. A young girl stepped forward to lay a hand-drawn card beneath the plaque. Traffic cones were gradually moved aside, allowing cars to resume their normal flow. But drivers slowed naturally, perhaps sensing the weight of the moment. The crossing guard, Mr. Phillips, raised his sign with extra care as he guided the first group of students across the newly renamed intersection. Inside the courthouse downtown, Ada Renee Vargas stood before a bank of microphones, her usual cautious demeanor replaced by firm conviction. The federal investigation has revealed systematic abuse of power spanning multiple departments. Today, I can confirm that all charges against former Officer Voss and his conspirators will proceed to trial. Additionally, the Department of Justice has implemented immediate oversight of our local law enforcement. She paused, allowing the announcement to settle. This isn't just about one traffic stop gone wrong. This is about years of coordinated intimidation, property theft, and civil rights violations. The evidence Mrs. Ellis collected, along with witness testimony, has exposed a criminal enterprise operating under the cover of authority. At the community center, Lieutenant Malik Reed and his team prepared to disperse. They moved with the same quiet efficiency that had marked their arrival, leaving no trace of their presence beyond the change they'd helped create. Devin Price secured the last of their equipment, while Isaiah Cole confirmed safe passage routes for remaining witnesses. "Mission complete," Malik said simply, exchanging a firm handshake with Marcus. No dramatic speeches, no victory celebrations, just the satisfaction of professionals who'd executed their duty with precision. Donovan Hale's news van idled nearby, his cameraman setting up for a live interview. The veteran reporter adjusted his tie, then nodded to Marcus. "We're on in 3, 2. "I'm here with Marcus Kane," Donovan began, camera rolling, whose wife's death sparked what many are calling a transformation in local law enforcement. "Mr. Kane, now that federal charges have been filed and the property scheme exposed, what comes next?" Marcus stood straight, his composure unwavering. "Today, we're announcing the Kendra Ellis Community Defense Fund. Using assets seized from the corrupt officials and developers, we'll provide legal protection for vulnerable homeowners. This was never about revenge. It was about ensuring no other family faces what we faced." "Your wife's evidence proved crucial," Donovan noted. "Did you know what she was documenting?" "Kendra believed in doing things in the open," Marcus replied. "She kept records because she knew sunlight is the best disinfectant. The courage wasn't just hers. It belonged to every neighbor who filmed, every witness who spoke up, every person who refused to look away." Throughout the city, a collective exhale seemed to ripple through streets and neighborhoods. Outside the police station, officers who'd opposed the corruption privately now felt empowered to speak. In community meetings, residents began sharing stories they'd kept quiet for years. The weight of silence lifted, replaced by the harder but cleaner work of reform. The afternoon light softened as the crowd gradually dispersed from the intersection. Parents led children home. Cars resumed their regular patterns, and the city's pulse found a new rhythm, altered but unbroken, witnessed and remembered. The late afternoon sun stretched across the city, casting long shadows that couldn't hide anything anymore. Marcus Kane stood at his kitchen window, watching the neighborhood children play basketball in the street, the same street where 30 Navy SEALs had stood their ground weeks ago. The sound of bouncing balls and laughing voices replaced the memory of sirens and shouts. His phone buzzed with another news alert about Voss. The former officer sat in federal custody now, facing a tower of charges that read like a textbook on abuse of power, civil rights violations, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and wrongful death. The prosecutors had added new charges yesterday after finding more evidence in the property scheme files. Marcus picked up his coffee mug, one of Kendra's favorites, chipped but still useful, and walked onto his front porch. Mrs. Washington waved from across the street as she tended her garden. Before all this, she'd been afraid to spend too much time outside, worried about patrol cars circling the block. Now she worked in her yard daily, proudly reclaiming her space. His phone lit up with a text from Renee Vargas. "Voss's lawyer's trying to deal. We're not interested. Trial date's set for next month." He replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. "Let them squirm. Let them face the sunshine they'd tried so hard to avoid. Down the block, Lila Benton was teaching her teenage son how to use a professional camera. She'd turned her impromptu live streaming into a citizen journalism program, training others to document their community with skill and purpose. The local news station had even hired her as a consultant. Donovan Hale's latest article appeared in his news feed. Property-seizure scheme unravels. More officials implicated. The veteran reporter had found his backbone, digging deeper into stories he'd once been afraid to touch. His coverage had sparked investigations in other cities where similar patterns were emerging. A patrol car rolled past, one of the new officers wearing the required body camera that never turned off. The driver nodded respectfully to Marcus. The department's federal oversight had brought changes: transparent complaint procedures, community review boards with actual power, and the end of internal investigations. Sunlight had become policy. Devin Price had opened a self-defense center in the community hall, teaching residents how to protect themselves legally and effectively. His classes filled up instantly, especially the ones for women and seniors. Isaiah Cole sometimes helped, showing people how to document encounters safely while standing their ground. Walking down his front steps, Marcus noticed fresh flowers at the base of the oak tree where Kendra used to read during summer afternoons. The neighbors kept the memorial alive without being asked. Each small bouquet, a reminder that the community's memory stayed strong. His phone buzzed again. A message from Lieutenant Malik Reed. Anytime. Just one word, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. If ever needed, 30 disciplined warriors would appear again, ready to stand in broad daylight for what was right. Marcus smiled faintly as he deleted the message. The threat of their return would keep certain people honest far longer than any law. At the elementary school, Lila Vargas had taken over Kendra's counseling position. She'd expanded the program, helping kids understand their rights while teaching them about peaceful resistance. The children who'd witnessed Kendra's death were receiving special support, learning to transform their trauma into determination. The corner store owner, Mr. Rodriguez, waved as Marcus passed. He'd installed better security cameras after everything happened, pointing them to cover not just his shop, but the entire intersection. Other businesses followed suit. The whole neighborhood had become a web of watching eyes, making sure nothing stayed hidden. A group of elderly residents sat in their usual spot outside the community center, playing chess and keeping track of everything. They'd been the first to spot the pattern of property harassment, but nobody had listened then. Now their observations were treated as valuable intelligence by federal investigators building cases against corrupt officials. The Kendra Ellis Community Defense Fund had already helped 3 families fight off predatory developers. Each victory was public, documented, and widely shared. The old system of quiet pressure and midnight threats couldn't survive in the open air. Law firms were lining up to take cases pro bono, recognizing which way the wind was blowing. Court dates loomed on Marcus's calendar, highlighted in bold. Unlike the quick private hearings that used to bury police misconduct, these would be public spectacles. Every detail would be examined under the harsh light of federal prosecution. Voss's lawyers had tried to move the proceedings to a different city, claiming bias. The judge had denied their motion with a single sentence. Justice happens in the community where the crimes occurred. The street where the confrontation had erupted now felt different, reclaimed rather than feared. Children rode bikes past the spot where Devin Price had dropped that first aggressive officer. Neighbors held cookouts where riot police had once formed lines. The pavement remembered, but it no longer threatened. Marcus paused at the intersection where it had all started. The gas station owner had painted his building, erasing the last visible scars of that day. But the memorial plaque still caught the sunlight, its message clear and unapologetic. A mother and child stopped to read it, the woman explaining quietly to her daughter why remembering mattered. The community had absorbed the lesson completely. Silence protected the wrong people. When a new officer was caught harassing teenagers last week, 5 different videos hit social media before his shift even ended. The department suspended him within hours. The system learned quickly when exposed to enough light. The sun continued its descent, stretching shadows across clean streets and quiet yards. But these weren't the shadows that hid corruption. They were simply nature's way of marking time, honest and predictable. Justice, once achieved, had no reason to hide. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.